Greetings and welcome to Smartwatch Ticks. If you're watching this video, it's probably because you're interested in updating the firmware on your No.1 D5 watch. Well, you've come to the right place. You may have gotten a push notification that you have software ready to be installed, or you may have gone to the No.1 website and checked in their download section for updated firmware related to your watch. Either way you found out about it, it's probably a good idea to update your watch because bugs are fixed and new features are installed, and we're going to show you how to do that. What you want to do first, and if you're lucky, you can skip most of the rest of this video, is you want to go into your watch and you want to go into your settings. When you're in your settings file, you can scroll all the way to the very bottom to About Device. Now, when you open this up, scroll again to the very bottom and make note of what version of firmware you have installed. Here, it's 2015, so it's 15, December 23rd, just before Christmas. 2015, December 23rd. So it's 15.12.23 is the custom build version. Next, you go back up that list to the top where it says Wireless Update. If you have a wireless update waiting for you and the vendor has it set up on their server to push it automatically to your watch, well, just like when you do the updates on your phone, check for updates and see what it says. All right, in this case, I have a network connection fail because it's not set up on Wi-Fi. And that's another issue. You make sure you're on Wi-Fi and you've had the watch on long enough to have a solid Wi-Fi connection. And if you do, then it should check successfully for you. What you might have come back, and usually is the case, is that your software is up to date. And if that's true, and you know there's an update waiting for you, but it's not being pushed to your watch automatically, then you have to do it this way. We're going to be talking about manually updating your smartphone or smartwatch firmware because we just covered what you do if you have automatic update. If that doesn't work and you're going to flash your firmware yourself, this is the instructions you'll need to follow. What you need is a PC, not a Mac, that's running Windows Vista or newer, okay? The video you're looking at is going to use the Windows 7 version. One, because I've got an older Windows version 7, and two, it's a whole lot easier than the Windows 8 stuff. We're not covering all that here, although I will show you the steps, okay? You're at youtube.com/smartwatchticks where you're watching this. In case you're seeing this someplace else, you want to get the full details, head on over on your browser to youtube.com/smartwatchticks. Okay, you're going to need the PC. And you're going to need 3 folders with these files. And this often comes to you as one zip file from a vendor's website. If you go on there and it has a download section and it shows you the latest firmware, the download you get when you unpack it or unzip it will probably have 3 folders in it. It's going to have a folder with USB drivers, another one with a thing called an SP flash tool, and then the critical updated firmware. Now, let's walk through this. The USB drivers. This is whenever you install something new on your computer that you want it to be able to talk to, like it used to be an external DVD drive or something like that. You'd need a driver. Well, same is true here. This is special code that you install on your PC so your PC can talk to your device, whether it's a smartwatch or a smartphone, all right? Then you need this thing called an SP flash tool. And that's basically a program that's used to install the new firmware onto your watch or smartphone. And finally, the updated software, which is exactly what you'll be installing. All right? Now, this is broken into 2 basic parts. The first part about USB drivers, you only have to do once. That's the good thing. And if this sounds too complicated, take it to a computer shop and with your file on a thumb drive or something, or even on the hard drive, and ask them to do the whole firmware update for you. But in the meantime, you could just ask them to update the drivers or install the drivers. Once this is done, you won't have to do this complex part that you're about to see again. It's a one-time shot on that same PC. The drivers are in there. It should work, okay? It's this 2 and 3 of using this SP Flash tool to update the firmware that will change from time to time as you get new firmware. So how do we go about installing the USB drivers? Let's walk through these procedures. If you have a Windows 8 or newer computer, it's more complicated because a system was set up where the drivers have signatures in them. They're signed drivers. And these drivers that you're installing are unsigned. They don't have that signature, so it will fail the signature verification on the computer. So you have to disable the driver signature verification. Following these steps to do that. Wait a minute. You're going to turn off the signature verification. That means it's vulnerable to downloading stuff that hasn't been reliably checked by whatever source it is that approves this stuff and allows a signature to be offered, right? You're doing this at your own risk, folks, but you're doing it in, hopefully, agreement with the smartwatch manufacturer where you downloaded these files from, right? I hope so. Don't download these things from a source you're not really familiar with on the internet, because in installing these USB drivers without the signature verification active, who knows? Just that word of warning. Of course, Windows 7 and older doesn't matter. There's no signature verification. You can install anything from anywhere. And, well, I don't want to get too bad about this, but just be careful that what you're doing when you're installing drivers has to do with the smartwatch that you own or the phone that you own, and is not some whiz-bang thing that's supposed to, I don't know, let you snoop through your camera on your smartphone remotely, blah, blah, blah. With that said, these are the steps that I presume you follow. I have not done this. I don't have the Windows 8 or 10 or 8.1 to do it on for all of this, but these are the steps you would follow. Let's walk them through. First, you have to disable the signature verification process, and this block is about that. You open your charms bar simply by holding the Win key and pressing C, and then you select to change the PC settings, okay? Click Recovery on the left-hand side and restart your computer, okay? It's down below the Advanced Startup. So, your computer is rebooting, and you wait until it comes up with the blue screen, and then you select Troubleshoot. All right? You there? Has it booted up? Okay. You select the advanced options at that point, and then Startup Settings. Okay. Click the Restart again. All right? Then you'll see some options to choose. Look down for Option 7 to disable driver signature verification. When your PC boots up fully, you're ready. Now your Windows 8 or 10 computer is in basically the same condition as the old Vista or 7 with relationship to drivers, and you'll be able to install these drivers that are unsigned if you followed this. Now, let's get to what we actually do. This is the process for everything at this point, but in particular Vista and Windows 7 if you're running on those machines. You got to prepare the software. So you download the required software and unzip the files to reveal these different folders. Okay? These may be in Chinese, folks, so look for the word USB and maybe some Chinese characters, or SP Flash. If you see those in English, that'll give you a hint as to what's in these folders. And those are the ones you're going to be wanting to use here. You download those and unpack them. Okay, so you've got these 3 folders. Make sure you know the path to these folders on your computer so you can find them later, because you are going to need to navigate through your folders to locate these files that you're going to be installing. So make note of where they are, probably in your downloads folder, most likely, but it's up to you where they end up. You might have put them on a flash thumb drive or something. Wherever they are, make sure you know where they are. Okay, do not See that bold word? Do not connect your device to your PC right now. You're leaving your watch or your phone on the side, turned off. That's the last step we're going to be doing. Some people mess up and plug in at this point, and you don't want to do that. Wait until we tell you to do that. You install your USB drivers next, and you only need to do this once. If the USB driver folder has an automatic installer, you can use it to install, and you can skip all the rest of the stuff. Simply follow the instructions of the automatic installer, and when you're done, go to step 3, which is coming up. That's the easy way out. If you don't see something in that folder that has the USB on it, that has a file that ends in a .exe, if you see that, click on it, even if it's in Chinese probably. If you don't see that, then you don't have an automatic installer, and you need to do this manually, really manually. And now we're going to do that in these last instructions. If there's no auto installer, then on your PC, locate and run Device Manager. All right? When you open the Device Manager, touch any item in the list, doesn't really matter. You just need to activate something so you can light up the action menu at the top. From the top, drop down the action menu and select Legacy Hardware. Okay, that's an option that will open a dialog box. All this is to get to the point where you can install these, quote, foreign drivers. When that dialog box opens, click Next, and then select the option to install manually. There's 2 options. Select manually and click Next again. When you get to the next page, click the hard disk button and locate the USB drivers. All right? When you click the hard disk, it's going to open up the navigation thing, and you click through to get back along the path to get to the folders and the one that has the USB drivers. And then you stop for a second. Listen to me now. You have one of 2 kind of PCs, a 32-bit or a 64-bit. And you need to know which you've got because the drivers are different. So when you browse and get to the driver file, you need to make sure you know which you are running on. Most likely, if it's a relatively new one, it's 64-bit. But just to be sure, you can right-click on My Computer. You know, when you bring it up from the Start menu, the My Computer, right-click on that My Computer and check the properties. In the properties, you'll see whether you are 32-bit or 64-bit. Make note of that, and then you're going to go and select the USB driver. There's probably 2 of them in there. One of them will have the number 64 as part of it. Click on that one if it's a 64-bit machine, or the other one if it's 32. All right? Once you've done that, you've basically selected the driver that needs to be installed, and now you click Next. You click Next again, and then you click Finish. If you're successful, your USB drivers are installed. So, for those of you on the Windows 8 or newer, you can now re-enable your driver signature verification. I don't know if you need to just reboot and it will automatically turn it back on, or if you need to go through the basic steps like this to get to the same place so that you can re-enable the signature verification. But I suggest that you don't leave it in the condition of being disabled, just in case there's a way a hacker could come in with some malware and enable, and install drivers if you had this thing disabled on your Windows 8 or 8.1 or 10 machine. We're done with installing the drivers. That is probably the most challenging part. If you get past this, the rest is going to be easy. All right. To flash the firmware, you're going to need to follow these instructions. It looks a little complicated, but it's not really. We're going to use a specific file. The one that I have is capital ENG, meaning it's English. There are different languages. It's an SP_flash_tool_V5. It's version 5. There's a version 3 out there, and it works differently. There's videos on the internet on how to use version 3, and at this point, the version 3 may not support what you're trying to do, so try to make sure you got a version 5. There's some revision numbers usually after the file, so you know what version you're using. Probably the latest version is great. If this is one that came with that package of files that your vendor sent you, including the firmware file and the drivers, this is probably a good one to use. Unless it's in Chinese or something and you don't read that, then you're going to want to use an English version. Whichever way, you're looking for the SP Flash tool, all right? So, in the SP Flash Tool folder, you're not just going to launch it by clicking Flash Tool EXE. You're going to right-click on it, okay? Right-click and then, select the flashtool.exe. And you'll have options. Select Run as Administrator and start running the Flash Tool program as administrator. This will save you headaches later down the road of having to enter your verification that you're an administrator if you have your machine set up that way. Just a wise thing to do, I understand, to be able to do this cleanly by running the Flash Tool program as administrator. Wait for it to fully load. They say it takes quite a while before it gets up, and you don't want to try to second guess it. This whole thing is a time of patience. Have something else to do. Clean the house, make lunch, go take a walk. There's a good chance that some of this might take a while. So don't rush it. If you do, you could have problems, all right? Once it's all loaded up, you're going to see a screen, and on the right side, you're going to click on Scatter Loading. Now, for the watch device that you're watching right now, we're going to have the whole computer walkthrough later. This is the overview text of what is coming. And watch on the screen and you'll see where we're clicking on Scatter Loading. When you click on that, again, you navigate to the firmware folder now, and one item should appear, and that's the scatter file. A scatter file is kind of like a directory, an index. It's a small little text file that tells the program, the Flash tool, what other files need to be loaded and how and where. So when you click on Scatter Loading and you load the scatter file, it's going to be populated with a bunch of file names, and you'll see those on the screen. They have check boxes to the left. Most of them, sometimes all of them, most of them will be checked. Don't check any that are not checked. It may cause this whole thing to hiccup. Just leave them alone. Don't check any more of the check boxes. Okay, that's all done. Now, there's a little drop-down menu just above where all these files are loaded, and it has some options, and one of them is like firmware update. You could maybe select that one if you have all of the boxes checked automatically. However, advice I'm getting from those who know is just select download only. It will update the firmware in the way the vendor intended without possibly doing some deeper updates to files you don't want to be touching. So select download only from that drop-down menu that's above the listed files. And then, above all of that, is a big button that says Download. Tap that Download button, and we're ready to start plugging in your device. Now, you remember at the beginning of this, I hope, and I'll repeat it again, when you plug in your device, you want it to be turned off. You do not want it on. If you can remove the battery, do so, and then reinstall the battery, but don't turn your device on, okay? The only time that you would just simply power down the device and leave it that way is if you don't have a removable battery inside. If you can take the back off and remove the battery, do so now, even if you have it powered down. It's a wise thing to do, okay? So if you can remove it, do that, and then reinstall it. Put the battery back in, but don't turn it on. If it's not removable, turn it off. If it's stuck booting, let it run until the battery is fully empty. If you don't want to take the back off and disconnect the battery, it's this way. If it's either stuck booting up or it's in that looping process, turn it off or let it go until the battery runs down completely and it's dead, basically, from no power. When all that's done and you know your device is completely off, you connect that device to your PC using your USB cable and wait. Do not turn the device on at any time, and do not disconnect. This is where big patience comes in, especially if you ran your battery all the way down. It's going to have to charge with enough juice for all of this stuff to go, and the computer's going to sit there with that download waiting until the watch has enough awareness of itself to allow the process to begin. That could be a couple of hours, I understand. So be patient, okay? Don't turn it off and don't disconnect. Don't think that nothing is happening. Let it go all night if you need to. And make sure before you even connect the cable that you've set the device and the cable in a place where it's not going to get jiggled. Don't touch it. Don't wiggle it. A lot of people have ended up with bad problems because they decided to move their watch or their phone, and that little movement caused a disconnect, and that interrupted the process and basically stopped it all. So once you begin, leave everything alone and don't let anybody touch it. Not your dog, not your cat, not your kids, okay? If the battery was dead again, it may take extra long for the battery to charge, so be patient. All right. You want to make sure your PC has a strong battery charge as well, and it's actually best, of course, if it's plugged into a power. Now, if you have an uninterruptible power supply, that's even better. Goodness, if you had a fluctuation in power from the power company while all this is happening and it shuts down your PC, if you don't have a laptop, that could be another way that you'd run into an interrupt in this process that would be devastating for your device. So make sure you got either a really strong battery charge on your laptop, and it's actually best if you just keep your PC plugged in. Now, once you see the green OK light come on the computer screen, you should be able to disconnect your device and turn it on, and everything should work normally, except you'll have the new firmware. All right? Again, if you want to check what that new firmware is, you can go into your settings and scroll all the way down to About, and then at the very bottom of About, it usually lists the new software version, and that should tell you if you were successful in getting your firmware updated. Also, if your device wasn't booting up properly to begin with, like you saw in mine, and it suddenly starts booting up and goes all the way, then you know you were successful too. However, if it doesn't boot up, these are some things you could try. Try removing the battery again, and if you can, and then reinstall it. Put your device in recovery mode, which we're not going to cover here. This again is a site to explore smartwatches. This is not a technical site for troubleshooting devices in these deep levels of fixing them. There are other websites that do that. I plan not to go there because it's taking away more of what I want to cover in all the goodies that come with these watches. Do a factory reset after you're in recovery mode or instead of. That's also not covered here. And check elsewhere on the internet if you need any more help on this. This whole area is complex. If you go, oh my goodness, it didn't work, and want to leave comments under this video, feel free. I'm not going to be answering them though. I answer most of them on all the other videos, but this area I'm not an expert. And if there are experts that are watching this and would like to communicate back to people, feel free to leave your issue in the comments and maybe somebody else will respond to you. But I highly advise you to check elsewhere for how you would twerp your watch or install, root it if necessary, or do other procedures to get the firmware to install, okay? Alrighty, that's the basic outline. Once the drivers are installed in your computer, you don't have to do that again. You only do this section. So follow these procedures anytime you get an update for your firmware, and you should be okay. Now, let's go and take a look at your specific watch. So the first thing that we need to do, of course, is to install the drivers. We're looking at a Windows 7 machine. And let's take a quick look at the software. I've got some software here related to firmware updates. And the main files are the ones that we have to work with first off. These are from the XDA developers. And these guys are like really on top of it. The USB VCOM drivers are the ones we're going to install. We have the possibility of doing an automatic install. We have the install driver capability, but we're not going to do that. We're going to do it manually. This is a Windows 7 machine, and here's your basic 32-bit, and there's the 64-bit. So just wanted to show you where these are, because that's where we're going right now to install these. Then later, we'll go back into the English SP Flash tool. Here's these different versions. This is the one I said I was going to be using. Here's a little newer one. Anyway, the links I have at our website, well, actually our YouTube channel, right? youtube.com/smartwatchtics. Look for this video, and there'll be links to these particular pieces of software. So we're going to go looking for this particular one, because if I go in here and right-click on the computer and show properties, it's a Windows 7 machine, and down here you can see it's a 64-bit, okay? So we are doing a 64-bit install. Now, we found those files, but what we've got to do first is go into the device manager. So I'm going to type in DEVI. There we go. There's device manager right there. Let's click on that, and it opens up. Now I pretty much can just click on anything, I think, in here, and as long as I activate the action menu where I can say add legacy hardware, we're in business. You see that on the top of the screen there? Add legacy hardware, and we're in the wizard. So we say next, and we want to install the hardware manually. So we select this one, we go next, and we navigate ourselves down to find the device we're looking for. We're going to show all devices, and we have a disk, and we now look for on the C drive, okay, browse the C drive, my documents. All right, I'm in Smartwatch Technology, in the Watch software, in the firmware updates, in the main files, where we're taking the drivers from XDA. We're going to use the VCOM drivers for Windows 7, and it's the Win64, which is this one right here. Okay, so we have located it. Now we say OK. And click Next. To start installing it, click Next. Windows can't verify the publisher, but let's go ahead and install it anyway. And we're waiting. And there we go. We've completed adding the hardware. We select Finish, and we are done. And now the drivers are installed. We only had to do that once. This was that once. All right, let's move on with actually installing the firmware. We're going to go into this English SP Flash Tools folder. And remember, on Flash Tool, I'm going to right-click on this one. When I right-click, I get a drop-down menu, and at the very top, possibly slightly off the screen, it says Run as Administrator. Now, we haven't run this before, so we're going to run it now. And it's letting us know that it's an unknown publisher, but we trust it, so we're going to say yes. Here we go. Now we're following that section 3 in the written directions. We're going to load the scatter file by hitting Scatter Loading. Okay, we go back to Documents. we go into our smartwatch technology, our watch software. We're doing firmware updates. We've already done the main files. Now we are going to go to the D5. We have two choices of firmware. Let's go to the newest one. When you get in here, here's the other files from No.1, your drivers, your flash tool, and here's the actual firmware where we click on the scatter file. Okay, it populates everything into the tool. Everything's good to go, check marked. We have download only. Remember, you could select other things here, but you don't want to. Just use the download only. That's the best feature. And when we press download, the computer is now ready to actually do the software installation. So we take our charging dock, we take our watch, we put the watch in the charging dock. I'm going to set that now carefully on the side of the computer so it can't be jiggled once I put the wire in. And now I stick the wire into the port and we wait. As you can see, it's preparing. The drivers were all recognized, and it's now going through the process of installing the software into the watch, or basically flashing the software or the firmware. Fortunately, it's a relatively small watch, and it's a relatively small files, so it's not going to take us very long to put this firmware into the watch. Be careful again, don't touch anything. You don't want to interrupt this process while it's happening. We're already halfway through. So anytime you get information from your manufacturer that there's a new update, and you can just go to the website and check. Usually they have a downloads button. Go in there on your watch version and check to see if there's a new software or firmware update, and just download it and follow these procedures. You don't have to do the drivers again. They're already installed. All you need to do is run this SP for smartphone flash tool. When you get the green check mark after you've done the scatter log loading, right, and loaded in all of the information from the firmware, you're done. So now we should be able to just simply disconnect the watch, turn it on, and we see No.1. Now the first time through, it's going to take a little longer than normal. It's got to basically reinstall a bunch of stuff. But once it comes up to the starting screen, it's like you have a brand new watch. Now, with that said, it is a brand new watch in terms of the firmware being installed in it. However, if you had other things like clock faces that you have been installing, or music in your music library, or videos, or other things, like a really good one is your app backup and restore. If you've been backing up your apps and you had done that, you'll have a folder called App Backups and Restore, and in that folder are the APKs, which are the installation files for each of the apps that you had originally on your watch. This did not wipe everything out because we didn't select that option that said format. We only did the download, and that downloaded this new software. Now, yes, when it comes up, you're going to need to start the watch from scratch. You've got to put in all the stuff from the very beginning, including selecting your language and so forth. Then you're going to go through all of the processes of whatever tutorials they give you, whatever else they want to do. And then you got to go onto your Wi-Fi, and we have whole videos up on the proper setup of your watch, so you can check those out. But basically, you have now flashed the new firmware, the watch is up and running, and if you want to install apps and you successfully use that app backup and restore, simply go to your files down here, your file manager, right? Sorry, my thumb's in front of you, isn't it? I'm not watching the camera. We go to the app backup and restore. There are all of your applications. If I want to install Assistive Touch, next, next, next. Are you guys seeing this? Next. It's kind of dim. Next, 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 and install. Now, without having to go to the Play Store, without connecting to the internet, without doing anything, I'm able to install all of my apps because I backed them up. That's all about firmware updating and a little bit of an extra benefit for you there to show you how you can actually install your apps. Thanks for watching. This is Smartwatch Tics, the YouTube channel, and that is all about flashing firmware updates to your No.1 D5 watch.